Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is 6:04 p.m. We do have a quorum, and our participation notice, this meeting is conducted utilizing teleconference communications and will be recorded for live streaming as well as open to public attendance, subject to social distancing, applicable health orders. All City of Beaumont public meetings will be available via live streaming and made available on the city's website, YouTube webpage. You can access them there through the website beaumont.gov/livestream. Public comments will be accepted using the following options. Written comments will be accepted via email, will be read aloud during the corresponding item of the meeting. Public comments shall not exceed 3 minutes unless otherwise authorized by the City Council. Comments can be submitted anytime prior to the meeting as well as during the meeting up to the end of the corresponding item. Please submit your comments to nicolew@beaumontca.gov. Phone and comments will be accepted by joining a conference call prior to the corresponding item of the meeting. Public comments shall not exceed 3 minutes unless otherwise authorized by the City Council. Please use the phone number 951-922-4845. In-person comments are subject to the same adherence of the applicable health orders and the social distancing requirements. In compliance with the American Disabilities Act, if you require special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact the city clerk's office using the above email or call 951-572-3196. We do require notification 48 hours prior to the meeting. We're making this available now for anybody who may be listening to it at some time in the recorded messages so that you can see that. So, meeting has been called to order, and the first thing that we'll do is conduct a roll call, please.
Councilmember Santos stated he would be absent this evening. Councilmember Fenn.
Here.
Treasurer Janetti.
I'm here.
Thank you. Chairman Cooley.
Here.
Vice Chair Vanderpool.
Here.
Member LeMasters.
Here.
Member Garcia.
Here.
And Member Nuno.
Here.
All right, thank you. So, we've already acknowledged that Council Member Ray Santos has requested to be excused. So the first item on our business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and if we can get Mr. Vanderpool to lead us in that, please.
Sure, you bet. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this point in time, we're asking if there are any adjustments to the agenda as published. Anybody have an adjustment? I see no indication, so we'll move on. And does anyone have a conflict of interest that they need to disclose at this time? Again, no indication that anyone does. As stated, this meeting is open to the public and conducted in a virtual format, inclusive, so that all who want to be involved can be. So now we'll move on to the action items. First is the approval of the minutes. I assume everybody's had a chance to read the minutes. Anybody have a correction? I see no indication. So with that, I'm calling for a motion to approve.
I'll move.
And a second. See a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Fenn.
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti.
Yes.
Chairman Cooley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Vanderpool.
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Member LeMasters.
Yes.
Member Garcia,
Yes.
and Member Nuno.
Yes.
Right. The vote does indicate that it is approved, and so the action is that we approve those minutes, and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. And that item is the general fund and wastewater budget to actual through February 22. And we have a staff report by Jennifer, your station.
Yes, thank you, Chair. What I have for you is the general fund and wastewater budget to actual through February of 22. Now, this consists of 8 months of activity. Starting with the general fund analysis, we have received 6 months of sales tax, and that has surpassed the budget. City staff is working with HDL to determine if any portion of what has been received is one time or if we will continue to see the increased trend. Other taxes category, that includes motor vehicle in lieu of property tax, which has recorded one of 2 payments and is trending higher than budget. We have increased building permit activity trending higher than budget, and investment earnings are trending below budget. For expenses, we have 17 of 26 pay periods have been reported and costs are trending lower than budget. Utility costs are trending high and contractual services are trending lower than budget. And you have just one of your fire services invoices paid within that, and that was $914,004.51. Remaining in budget is $741,845 of funds that are available for a city council appropriation. Going to wastewater fund analysis, we have 3 of 6 utility billings recorded and trending lower than budget. 17 of 26 pay periods recorded and costs are trending lower than budget. Utilities are trending higher than budget, and we have 1 of 2 debt service payments that have been recorded. The next debt service payment will be recorded in this month, and you will see that on your April reports. And that leaves a year and approximately $369,000 to be retained for utility reserves for fiscal year 22, and that is driven by savings in both personnel and operating costs. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Anybody have a question?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Okay, Jennifer, so overall, both budgets are in a positive position right now?
Correct.
Based on the ups and downs that we have? Okay.
Correct.
Yes.
Jennifer, a quick question on the sales tax, since I don't have the 12-month or, excuse me.
Mr. LeMasters, your mic.
Sorry about that. Jennifer, since I don't have the 8-month trend in front of me, the month by month, just a question showing the sales tax is now up to 10.9 million year to date. Was there a sudden surge that we saw in the last month, or has it been trending up above budget for the full year?
So what we do, the way we get payments for the sales tax is we get what's called advance payments throughout the months, and then they do a quarter cleanup. Okay. And within our first quarter payment, we saw about 1.6 of a payment for that. And then the second quarter that we received is about 6.4. So there was a large jump in your second quarter payment that was received.
Okay, thank you.
And then I have one question of clarification. It's stating that payroll is trending lower, but recruitment is up. Is payroll lower because we have some open positions that will be filled?
There were some vacancies throughout the year that were being filled, and that was the reason for the recruitment cost being higher than what was anticipated.
All right. And I'm sure that will be addressed in the next budget. Thank you. Any other questions by anybody? Any public comments?
I have no written requests. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
I ask for a motion to approve to receive and file the report.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
And do we require a roll call on this?
Yes, I'll do roll call,
Okay.
please. Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman Cooley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Vanderpool,
Yes.
Member LeMasters,
Yes.
Member Garcia,
Yes.
Member Nuno.
Yes.
Okay, this passes, and so we'll receive and file the report. And then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but it looks like an invoice pay. And we have a staff report from Lisa Leach, please.
I believe that we skipped number 3, investment policy certification.
We
Mr.
certainly
Chair.
did, I'm sorry. Thank you for calling me back to that. Where we should be is on the investment policy certification, and that report is coming from Jennifer Eustachian.
Yes, thank you. On May 18th of 2021, City Council approved a revised City of Beaumont investment policy, and city staff submitted that investment policy to the California Municipal Treasurers Association, their certificate program, and is pleased to present the Finance and Audit Committee the certification that has been received. And according to the CMTA, the benefits of having the policy certified include trust, confidence, and verification to the governing body that the policy has been reviewed and certified by a professional organization, that the policy has been reviewed by a fellow of the CMTA members, to show transparency of the governing body to the public, to demonstrate that due diligence was performed on the investment policy. California government code sections are included and cited in the policy to assist to satisfy auditors when reviewing the investment policy, and all 18 areas of investment policy were looked at. And we have reviewed comments that were provided by the program reviewers, and they did include some suggestions for possible improvement, and we'll take those into consideration at our next policy review. And with that, I'm pleased to present the certificate. It is in your packet, and any questions, I'm here to help.
Any public comments?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Okay, any committee comments, questions, discussion? Okay, it looks like we've discussed this in the past and we're comfortable with it, and I believe we're ready to ask for a motion to receive and file the presentation. Do we have a motion?
I
So
move.
move. Oh,
Second.
go ahead. Okay,
I'll
I
second.
got the first, Barry's got the second.
Okay, so Councilman Fenn makes the motion. We have a second.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman Cooley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Vanderpool,
Yes.
Member LeMasters,
Yes.
Member Garcia,
Yes.
and Member Nuno.
Yes.
Okay, this passes, and we will receive and file the report. And now we can talk about invoice pay, accounts payable presentation, and the staff report from Lisa Leach.
Good evening. I do have a presentation for you this evening, so let me start sharing my screen here. Can you see that?
Not
it's-
yet.
It's not on the screen.
Well, let me X out of here again. There we go. I should be able to see it now.
It just
Yeah,
came up.
Yep. No.
Okay, there we go. All right. Let me do this. Okay, so I thought I would start off by giving you a little bit of background of invoice pay and how it came about. So in August 2020, Tyler Technologies, which is the current city's financial software provider, reached out to the finance staff regarding a new service that they were developing for third-party payments. So at that time, finance staff reviewed the presentation and determined that participating in the pilot program was going to be too much time on our staff. But they came back again in May of 2021, and finance staff reviewed what they were recommending and provided. They did provide references of customers, which we did reach out to. And upon further due diligence, the finance team determined to go ahead and go live with Invoice Pay in December of 2021. So what is Invoice Pay? Invoice Pay is an automation of the payment process. It's provided by Encode Tyler Technologies, which is our current accounting software system. So it's integrated with the Tyler system. It facilitates payments via check, ACH, and their virtual card. So it offers multiple modes of payment which provides the vendors with flexibility. Important to note, this doesn't eliminate our in-house checks. We still can process in-house checks. We do not have to send all of our payments to Invoice Pay. So we also have flexibility. The city is protected for fraud and misuse of payments issued through provision of indemnification, insurance, and dispute resolution. And we did have the contract reviewed by our legal counsel. As some of you may be aware, fraud of ACH payments has been on the rise for the last couple of years. And so it was very important to the finance team to try to find ways to reduce the city's risk for ACH fraud. The most common fraud is scammers will send an email that looks like a request from the vendor to change the bank and routing number for future payments. So by using Invoice Pay and pushing the burden on them to set up the ACH payments, we switched transfer the risk of ACH fraud to them. Another thing to note is that this does not change the city's accounts payable process. We still follow the process with new vendor setup, and this is to ensure the best system of controls. So what are the benefits of Invoice Pay? The vendors have choices of payments. They have choices of payment methods, so they can increase their payments. The fastest one is through the virtual card. It transfers risk to a third party. It decreases the city's costs in the form of purchasing checks, the ink used to print on the checks, and the envelopes and the postage to mail out the payments. It just decreases staff time in stuffing checks, and the city staff work with Invoice Pay when checks become stale dated. And the final feature is that the program provides a revenue sharing in the form of a rebate to the city. So in May of last year, this is part of their PowerPoint presentation that they presented to us. And they sent us this analysis of what our current payment mix looked like. You can see in the very first column, what we were paying is about 5% was via ACH and 95% was via checks. In the second column, which is titled In-Network Match, that's what it would look like when we immediately switched over to Invoice Pay, because they have some of our current vendors already in their payment lists. And so it converted the mix to 14% ACH payments, 19% card payments, and 67% checks. So upon post-implementation, where after you convert over to Invoice Pay, you start sending first payments to your vendors, there's a lot of paperwork that's sent to them to set them up, and they give them options to stay on check, go to the virtual card, or go to ACH. And so post-implementation is about 6 months to go through that process. And they came out with the figures that it would look like 30% to the card, 40% to ACH, and 30% to checks. So this last slide is the cost savings that they showed based on the amount of checks we processed. And under our current mix, the cost per payment that they come up with, the $3, is basically the cost of your checks, your ink, your envelopes, and staff time to mail this out. So that was trending at about $8,833. And when you switch over to Invoice Pay and you're fully implemented on the new mix of the 30, 30, 40, you can see that the cost would be about $1,592. So our savings is $7,241. And then also through the rebate program, they provide a rebate to us, which basically comes from vendors using the virtual card. And it can range from $6,643 to $8,119. And these rebates are used to reduce our Tyler Technology invoices, or we can also use them to pay for staff for additional training. So with that, I will open up to any questions you may have.
Yes, I have a number of questions.
Yes.
Did this go out to bid?
This did not go out to bid because this was a service provided through our Tyler Technologies. So there was actually very little setup work for us to do. And there are some systems, I believe, out there, but this was the easiest for us to convert.
Does this comply with our city requirements to request bids?
I believe this does, because there's no cost to the city for this.
Yeah, I'm still confused. Now, I don't understand how Invoice is accepting the liability. What liability are they accepting? It sounds like they're accepting liability for a vendor's method of receiving or place of receiving is
Yeah.
not changed. But are they
Correct.
accepting liability for bogus invoices?
Well, they are accepting liability for the payment method. So if a payment is paid to them or paid to the vendor, and they have to honor the amount of money that's paid. So yes, they do accept some sort of liability.
And who and how is the request for payment made? Who makes that? Okay, after the invoice is received, who authorizes that payment and what method?
So after the invoice is received, we follow the same process. We get all of our verifications, our authorizations from the directors, and the payment method we send out through AP automation, and the vendors get to choose after they receive notification from Invoice Pay, and this was done during the original setup. They got to choose if they were going to receive a paper check from Invoice Pay, or go ahead and set up through ACH, or go to a virtual card. So the vendors get the choice of how they want their payment method.
Okay, so
through Invoice Pay.
So my question remains, is the city employee or the city treasurer the one who authorizes payment? Or is this an automated system within Invoice?
This is an automated system within Tyler. So we can either cut a check through our check system here at the city, or send it in through Invoice Pay, and then they cut the checks through them.
And
so the way it works is we send through the city, we send one batch total payment to Invoice Pay. And from there, the liability switches over to Invoice Pay in determining all the different methods that they're going to pay our vendors.
Okay. And then who determined the costs and what did they use for data?
We sent them a list of all of our payments that we've made. I believe we ran about a year. We ran about a year's worth of payments. We sent them the different vendors that we used. So they were able to match that with the vendors that they already have set up in Invoice Pay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't understand that. How did they determine how much it cost the city to issue a check? Where did they get the time that's spent by the employees?
We
the
provided
cost
all
the
of that
employees?
information to them.
All right.
Yeah,
And the same thing with, we provided the information as to what we're spending on check processing and printing and all of that.
correct. Yes,
And we provided all this without an RFP.
correct.
Okay. And then the rebates. Is there a contract? Is that guaranteed? Is there a minimum that's guaranteed, or is this a pie in the sky hope?
It's based on it's based on the amount of vendors that go on the virtual card. And we do have
Based
contract
on
with
what?
them.
So do they have a dollar amount per vendor? So if we have X number of vendors, we're gonna get a minimum guaranteed rebate of this many dollars? Or again, is this
It's
just
not,
a figure they
I wouldn't
pulled?
call it a guarantee. They basically estimated based on the amount of vendors that they had in their system already that we were paying, and what their rate of being able to convert our vendors over from a check versus to basically the virtual card.
So we have no documentation of these numbers that they're giving us. We're
No,
trusting
they
them.
will be giving us, because we've been on this now for about 3 months, they will be giving us about 6 months, they will give us some information. I did get some information last Friday that they've calculated we've saved about $2,205 in check processing costs, but nothing yet on the rebate amount.
And have we verified and confirmed that amount?
I have not verified that amount yet. That was information I just got and read this morning.
Any comments from other committee members?
Well, when will we know we'll get that amount?
And it'll take about 6 months, so I anticipate probably about June. We will know roughly what we've generated so far in the first 6 months.
So you're saying in about 6 months, we'll have clearer numbers in terms of what is
Yes,
actually.
yeah.
Okay.
I have a
Question.
question. Go ahead.
I know the example has that there's 0 paper checks. Is that what we're trying to move to, is everybody to be on ACH payments or card payments and no paper checks?
No, because we want the vendors to have their say in how they want to receive their money. This isn't forcing anybody to go in any different route. It's trying to offer the best flexibility for the vendors to receive payments.
And with that, are you seeing a trend of vendors moving towards ACH or anything in particular? Or is it?
It's, we don't have the analysis on that yet. So until I get the analysis, I'm not sure who's completely switched over to virtual cards or ACH versus the checks, because you could see that we were, 95% of the payments were checks.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, is it possible that in 6 months we can get updated numbers versus
Yes.
anticipated numbers and all that
Yes.
stuff that can
Yeah.
go before the committee? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I add something into just to clarify as far as what the rebate is? It is based off of, it's 0.25% of interchange rate for monthly spend. And that's the revenue share. And that's based off of that virtual card. The whole agreement, there is no cost to the city. It's just an extra service that's provided by Tyler Technologies. Our AP process has not changed, and the fact that we are still going through the same process as far as getting the invoices, reviewing the invoices, grabbing the approvals by the correct directors, city manager, city council if needed, and processing through that. It's the very last step in the AP process. And it's simply just the how the vendors are getting the payment, whether we're cutting the check to them or if it's those payment methods offered by Invoice Pay.
Do we have any public comments?
I have a question, Steve.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the way I hear this is that there is no added cost to the city, but there's potential savings. Is that right, Jennifer or Lisa?
That's correct.
Yes, correct.
Okay, even if they stay on checks?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Next thing is, where is the process where the people who have ordered the work from the vendor, where do they authorize that that was an okay project to do? Like now I know how it's done. I look at, when I review the warrants, I can see who signed off on an invoice. Where is that done in the process now?
That is the same. So,
Yeah.
so the invoices still go to the directors. The directors have to review the invoices and approve, and then send through to finance for the AP process. That has not changed.
Okay, so then my last question is, are these checks issued before or after I would review and obviously Jennifer, all the invoices that we get each week? When does payment occur? Am I doing it after the fact or am I doing it before the fact?
I can't hear you. Were you able to hear that, Lisa?
I think you're asking if your approval process is before or after the fact?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's before we send payment out. It's the same process.
Okay.
Instead of us mailing checks, before we would mail the checks out, but now we just send a click of a button to them basically, and then they mail the checks out.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. So what I'm looking at is
It's the very last step. Yes.
when I sign off and you sign
Yes.
off, then it goes to the vendor to
Yeah.
pay it. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Correct.
That's my question.
Mhm.
One last question. How are the
Yes.
funds moved from the city's accounts to invoices accounts?
We do a transfer between our Citibank operating account.
And is that done manually? Is it reviewed manually?
Yes, it's on
Yes.
the ACH process that we still
Mhm.
follow the same process as before.
Correct.
So in the warrant process, I see that when it comes in, that money's being transferred.
Right. Right.
Okay, do any have any public comments or discussion?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Before we go for ask for a motion on this, I just want to comment that I'm very uncomfortable with this system. We're being quoted costs that we have no control over where they got those costs. We're being told that we're going to have cost savings, we're going to have rebates. It's not, we have no indication that it's in a contract. We have no idea where that's coming from, and we didn't send it out for an RFP. We don't know what other companies out there may be doing, what our costs or what our savings through those other companies may be. And with that, I'm going to ask if there's a motion, and will state that as chair, I think we've got the cart before the horse, and we may not be following proper policy.
No, I don't, Steve, I got to say something. In my private life, we examine what our costs for checks are. And going back 10 years ago, we were at the $3 range for us to process a check, to mail it and out. I don't think that's off. The key question here is this program isn't costing us anything. And it's got to be saving time for every check that we do not have to mail. So if that's why I asked the question. If all the people remain on wanting checks, we aren't paying anything more for this program. But every time they move them out of the check mode, we start saving money on the staff in the finance office. I think the numbers are fine. There's plenty of data that will show you what it costs a company to cut a paper check, let alone a city government.
And I would agree with that. I'm just not sure why they're kicking back cost savings. And okay, they're picking a number and then they're promising a rebate. I'm not.
Well, the rebate's based on that virtual card.
Right.
They're getting some kind of money back on that virtual card being used. That's the whole key.
Yeah.
The more virtual card they have, the more they're making. They're going to share with us a portion of that. And their goal is to get as much into that as they can.
And would another vendor share more with us? We don't have that information. So with that said, if there's any other comments before we ask for a motion?
I move that is this a receive and file?
Yes.
I move
Yes.
that we receive and file this presentation. Thank you, Lisa and Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Yes, agree. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second, but I do have a question.
Yes, your question.
So when we're expecting some feedback in 6 months, just the obvious question would be, then can we have a report back in 6 months to kind of check to see where we're at? And if we're not happy with it, then perhaps throw out some options and look further if there's other service companies that provide this and so forth. So I think it's good going forward. I just would like a report back to see how well it ends up going.
Yeah, and we will bring that report. And I just also too want to add that this is the only provider that's through our ERP system, the Tyler Technologies. So if it was a complete different service, it might not be the same type of process, but we could definitely look into that at the 6 months if you're not happy with it then.
Do we have the ability to receive and file with a recommendation that it be reviewed again in 6 months?
I think we can do that if Barry alters his motion.
I'll alter my motion to include a review in 6 months to see where we are.
And does our second agree?
And I'll second that. I'll still second it.
All right. Then I think it's appropriate to call for a roll call vote at this point in time.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes?
Chairman Cooley,
No.
Vice Chair Vanderpool,
Yes.
Member LeMasters,
Yes.
Member Garcia,
Yes.
and Member Nuno.
Yes.
Okay, then that passes, and it's received and filed with a recommendation that it come back for review in 6 months. Can that be added to our future agenda at this point in time so it doesn't just get lost?
Okay, it's been
Okay.
noted.
That moves us on to the next issue, which is the request for proposal procedure and establishment of a request for proposal review subcommittee. We have a staff report from Todd Parton.
Hello.
Hello, it's good to see you.
I know. Happy early, what is it, St. Patrick's Day?
Yes.
I
Yes.
guess that'll be tomorrow. So
Yeah.
forewarned to everybody, virtual and in person. So, as y'all know, we have a procurement process that we utilize, RFP, for major purchases. So these could be when we're out purchasing large pieces of equipment, professional services, constructing large improvements, things like that. So we've had a process in place since I've been here, and actually before that, where we go out primarily through the request for proposal process to solicit competitive bids. And when we go through that process, we have a scoring sheet that looks at everything from the history of the respondents or the proponents all the way down to the proposed cost for those services that we're trying to secure. And then we evaluate those. So in conversations with City Council through the evaluation process this year, one of the things we talked about was looking at ways to try to enhance the transparency of our process. So I'd like to take a couple minutes kind of talking about, as we define in the staff, what we currently do today and what we are proposing that the Finance and Audit Committee do to kind of step in to help provide some additional oversight and transparency of that process. So what we do right now, we go to council and council will authorize us to issue an RFP. So typically, if it's a capital project, it may be in the CIP, or it may be something in the budget that is there, park improvements, whatever they may be. So we put the RFP together and then we present that draft RFP to City Council. City Council then has a chance to review that and then provide any comment on the document. And then we advertise and go through that process. So we issue the RFP. We use the public purchase website as one of the primary ways to get the word out. So that's a nationwide clearinghouse that's got basically a concentration on public works related proposals that is in it. So a lot of vendors know that they can go there, they can find it. We can track, how many respondents that we have. In some cases, we may just have a few for specialty. In some cases, I think we've got, for example, our police station, a West Side Fire Station, project out to bid now, and we've had, I think, like 90 plans picked up by contractors and subcontractors. So we get a pretty good reach with that process. So anyway, we go through there. Upon the closing date, then we have a city staff team that we've established, and that team varies depending on what we're doing and the departments that are affected. So we have a team that comes together. They then independently review, each team member does, the proposals that are submitted, and then they evaluate those. The team then comes together and then compares their notes and then determines who the short list would be for vendors or proposers that we would want to interview. And so at that point, then we go through the process to interview that short list of proposals that are out there. And then we identify the preferred proposer to recommend to the city council. And then ultimately the city council considers that recommendation. So a couple of the key questions that are fairly frequent as we go through this process were, did we select the best qualified bidder? Did we choose this bidder on the basis of price? Did we, in some cases, we may have a consistent bidder who wins various bids. And the question would be, well, did the other vendors get a fair shake, or do we have kind of an imbalanced relationship with this one vendor? So, and those are legitimate questions to ask. What we would hope to do is to have the Finance and Audit Committee create a 3-member little subcommittee that would meet on an ad hoc basis. Those committee members could rotate. They could be different based on the different RFPs that are out there. We may do a dozen or so RFPs through the course of the year. So we're not talking about a monumental need to have current meetings, things like that. But as we go through that process, we'd like to be able to have that subcommittee basically sit down with staff, review how we came to the conclusion of the short list, how we came to the conclusion of who the recommended proposer would be, and then to make an independent evaluative determination back to council. So we then present to council, here's what the staff proposal was. There was a Finance and Audit Committee subcommittee that reviewed it and they concurred with staff, or they reviewed it and they did not concur with staff for these reasons. So that provides an additional amount of eyes and credibility, hopefully, and transparency through the process as we do that. So the committee members, one of those members we would hope would be our city treasurer, to be a standing member that would then maybe reach out and call, and then a couple of our other sitting members to be on that organization. So that's our proposal here. Happy and ready to answer any questions that y'all may have on this process.
Let me just add to Todd's presentation. This has been in the work for several weeks. I have spoken with the mayor about this and then with Todd. And the decision was not to have this subcommittee be part of the process, the evaluating and scoring of it. That's not our expertise. The transparency we want is that we look at the decision that is being recommended, and we vet that out with our questions and then send it up to the council for its blessing. So that's why we don't want to be a part of the overall process in there. It's the city. That's their jobs. That's their expertise. Us just to get that overview of it and vet it and put it on. Thank you.
I don't have
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
I don't have a question, more of a comment. If we agree to create this committee, I would just recommend that the standing member be identified as the city treasurer versus an individual, so that it doesn't have to be changed when the treasurer changes. I am totally in favor of this. It makes a great deal of sense. Do you have any?
A comment if I can add?
Yes, please.
Okay. Since something like this would go to the city council and just keeping, I'll call it arm's length. I do not think a city council member that is currently serving on the Finance and Audit Committee should be on this. Let the other members review that, because then it will still go to the city council for that review. And we can look at it both sides, but I think it prevents favoritism and so forth from the viewpoint of looking at a council member. Does my comment make sense?
Certainly does.
And I know I'm only speaking for, 1/5 of the council when I say this, and Ray is not here. But I like the process. I totally support it. I think it's a fantastic idea. But I think it's keep the council out of it when someone else is reviewing it. And then when it comes to council, then it appears to be a little more unbiased as a recommendation.
Totally agree.
That's just my thought.
So, Mr. Parton, at this point in time, would your recommendation be that we go ahead and recommend the structure of that subcommittee or members of that subcommittee to move up to the city council?
Well, I think at this point, it's really within your discretion. I was going to double check our action. So recommended that you form a request for proposal review subcommittee. So this is your determination. You can decide tonight how you want to structure that. We can try it out, see how it works a couple times. If you want to change something up, it's at your discretion to do this. So this does not have to go back for city council for ratification. This is implementation of a direction that they gave me as part of our review process for this year.
Okay, so that makes a little more sense. So at this point in time, I think there's not a whole lot of input from Mr. Giannetti. He's going to end up inheriting this as part of his responsibilities. And for the rest of us, do we have members who are willing to serve and feel confident to serve on this committee at this point in time? And I'm opening it up. Let's hear from you. And let me emphasize that what I picked up from Mr. Parton is that this isn't an onerous task. It's not going to take a great deal of time.
And Nicole promises to feed you pizza or burritos whenever you meet to review these.
Since Nicole's feeding us those.
But we could do these by Zoom, if we want to select, of course, we've got our treasurer, and then if we have a couple volunteers and maybe an alternate, just in case we need to make some determination and move a little bit faster. And so we can kind of keep that it's not technically a quorum because we don't have a quorum, but it would be a quorum of our little committee.
Then a question for Nicole. In the way this is structured and it's advisory, can an alternate serve as a member of this committee?
Yes, I think what Mr. Parton was stating earlier also is that it can be done like on an as-needed basis. So as proposals come forward, it could be a new subcommittee each time.
Right. Well, okay. We can do that too. So those alternates that are sitting here, and this might be an ideal situation for you to get a little more involved if you're interested in that. So what I'm looking for is volunteers who'd be willing to serve on the committee, and realizing that this may change based on the proposal, but is there anybody who's willing to do that and have that flexibility?
I'm willing to give it a shot to see what's kind of what it's about and
Okay.
see what I can give to the process. Mm-hmm.
So there's two of our three. Other committee members?
I would like to just add one thing, kind of counter to what Mr. Finn said. I thought initially we really wanted to have one of the council liaisons that's on this committee be part of it. I think it rounds off that vetting process so that when it goes before the council knows that also a council member has had an opportunity to see this as and vetted it. It'll make the overall process at the council meeting a lot faster, knowing that one of the council members has been involved in the process and has, gotten a lot of questions so that we don't create a lot of redundancy at the meeting. That's just my thought.
Then the
That certainly
question-
makes sense.
The
Yeah.
question I would have
Other
is,
side of the coin.
would
Yeah.
this committee be voting on these and saying, okay, all three
We
of
would
us
just-
agree
the
that
three- the
this
three
is done
people-
right, and then we just have the city council member there, but not be a voting member? Or is there no vote? It's just, the committee looked at it, the committee has these thoughts, these comments, and then pass it up to the city council?
But we need to keep our committee attendance to 3, so we don't have a quorum,
Right.
on this. So we can only have 3 people in attendance,
Right.
at these meetings. So we could Zoom, we could do conference call, we could do in-face, depends. And that would depend on the complexity, So, one of the things that, for example, we'll look at when the West Side Fire Station bids come in, that'll probably be one of the very first ones that you guys get to look at. So that's a big one. And so it'll be a great opportunity to kind of work through our process and see how we like that.
And so to avoid the quorum, would it be more appropriate that we have a city council member who's not on the Audit and Finance Committee?
I think it needs to be an Audit Finance Committee member, because we're really looking at this as from the context of finance and audit. And part of the neat thing about this process too, it allows our Finance and Audit Committee members, particularly if it rotates over time, to see inside the RFP process. And I guarantee there's probably going to be questions or recommendations or thoughts on, hey, we can do some of these things a little bit better. Maybe there's some, I think, some positive and some feedback things that'll come out of this as well through that process. So I think for that purpose and for the effort to try to get a fully fleshed out Finance and Audit Committee recommendation ought to be members of this body that would be populating this subcommittee.
Yeah, I was just thinking, okay, yes, that makes sense. Okay, then, Nicole, do we need to vote within the Audit and Finance Committee to establish this, or is this something that we can just do?
It can be a consensus, if you want to establish the first subcommittee.
So, at this point in time, we have 2 who are willing to jump in and start with it. Do I have a third who's willing to look at the first one and then decide what your involvement may or may not be in the future?
I would be willing to, assuming that we're not wanting to lock in that third member being a member of the city council. Because if it's Treasurer Janetti and then member Nuno, I'm willing to be that third, but if we want the city council member to be the third, I don't want to step into that position.
Okay,
Chairman, there was also a hand raised by Mr. Garcia.
yes, please, okay, so Mr. Garcia. Okay, Mr. Parton, perhaps I'm a little bit confused. I'm thinking we can have 3 members plus the city council and still not have a quorum, correct?
You can have 3 members of this body, and you could have a member of the council who is not part of this committee.
Okay, that was my recommendation.
I understand that, and that's but what I was suggesting is that you not bring an outside member from the council
Okay.
into this. This really should be a finance and audit centric evaluation, independent
So
evaluation.
then we'd end up working with 1 member of this committee who's not a city official. Everybody in favor of that? Let's give it a
Chairman,
shot and
there's-
see how it works.
There's also a hand raised by Mr. Fenn.
Yes, Mr. Fenn?
Yes, thank you. So the thought is, and my general viewpoint is, the more we can hear from the public, the better. And so I'll still stand my ground that it not be a member of the city council. If we have Mr. Janetti and 2 volunteers, there's our 3-person committee to make that happen. I don't know, just my thought. I'll agree with the consensus of the committee, but that's my personal thoughts on the matter.
Mr. Janetti?
You know what, based on the overall purpose of this is to provide greater transparency in this process. Going back in the city history, there wasn't this process back prior to 2014, and the city got into a lot of trouble
Right.
with vendor. This adds that 1 extra layer in there. It's an extra layer. It's not going to take a lot of time. Like Todd said, there's only 10 to 12 of these a year. but I tend to agree with Mr. Finn right now. If we could have more public involved in this process, it shores up that transparency.
I
rather
totally,
than- yeah.
totally agree with that. So what I'm proposing now, kicking out, is that we have 2 members and the city treasurer.
Yeah.
And those 2 members hopefully will rotate and switch around depending upon the proposals that are out there. Somebody may have more expertise, believe they can bring a little more to the table and go with that. So if this is by consensus, we don't need a roll call vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, then I believe this is set and
Sorry,
we'll
can
look-
I add one last comment to that?
Sure.
And the reason, and a good point about rotating it, is we might run into a conflict of interest, because if it's a particular project that's near where a member of the committee lives, that may facilitate the need for rotating people in and out. So I think it's a good plan going forward. So thanks, everybody.
Okay, and thank you. And my expectation is, correct me if I'm wrong, we'll receive some contact through Nicole, who basically contacts us that there's an event coming up or a proposal coming up, and we'll coordinate when that meeting and those people. Is that correct?
Sure, that's the process.
Would you like to be the subcommittee
Nicole,
boss?
Nicole, I have a
Mr. Chair?
question. Does this have to be approved by the city council, this subcommittee?
No, sir.
They don't have to authorize it, okay.
And we could set it up for you as our chair to be able to call on volunteers to
And
work on this.
I'm perfectly willing to do that. And I would assume I'd receive the contact from Nicole, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
That works. Okay,
Thank
so that item has been taken care of. And that moves us to a bond accountability subcommittee report. And Jennifer Eustachian has the staff report on that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Bond Accountability Subcommittee, which consisted of myself and Member Lemasters, met. We discussed the process on how debt service payments are made, as well as the process for use of bond funds and disbursements. Together, we put a bond information document, and it is before you this evening for the Finance and Audit Committee review.
Do we have any public comments?
I have no written requests. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Okay, so then it's out for committee comments, questions. Hopefully, we've all looked at this before the meeting. You have comments, questions? Let's have at it.
Remind me again, when and where we would use this document? Is it given to the public? What is it used typically for?
This could be a document that you could use within the committee, just to review as far as it comes to the bonds and debt service payments and requisitions and how we're making them, as well as if you wanted to put it on the website for public, you could do that as well.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, it doesn't appear to be any comments. That being the case, then is there any action that needs to be taken on this, or review and discuss, and that's all that we need, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and we've completed that. So then we're moving on to the next is the subcommittee updates. And we'll just run through these in the order that they've been printed out for us. The first committee is the internal control committees. Mr. Genetti, do you have anything to report?
Nothing now? No.
Okay, so we really haven't had any activity. The financial training committee.
I'll talk about that. Yeah, we don't have anything new to report at this point. I'm in the process of using Screencast-O-Matic to do a screencast over the presentation. And after I'm done with that, then we're moving that on to Biz Station, and then we'll hopefully soon be able to have a completed presentation for you all.
Thank you.
You have
CFD,
David, do you have a time when you think that might?
I'm thinking, I would probably say, let me take a look here. Real quick at my schedule. We should be able to get it done by the first week in April. Which would mean, I'm thinking I can probably get it by the April break. Oh, by the April break, the April meeting. Because that would
Okay.
be on the 12th, right? I believe. Oh, no, the 11th. So, yeah, let's plan on the 11th. I think I should be able to get it to them by then.
okay,
Good. It's
so,
just that I don't, I kind of sold this as a really big thing with the council, and I think they're waiting for it. So I just wanted to have a date so I can set a realistic
No problem at
expectation.
all. I'm glad you did
Okay.
that. Yeah, I'm thinking let's set the 11th as the due date there.
yeah, we'll pencil that in to be discussed as a future agenda item.
Okay.
And then we'll
Super,
have it
David.
there and
Cool.
put a little more pressure on you to finish it.
It's okay. I need the pressure.
Okay, the next one's the CFD training.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll report on that. Mr. Vanderpool had to reschedule, so we've rescheduled our subcommittee meeting to March 30th, and we will have our presentation from staff at that point to himself and him and myself, and then we'll go forward from there and then bring that back to the committee.
Okay, and we'll note that progress is being made. Our Reserve Policy Committee consists of a single member, and before we ask Member Nuno on that, is there any other of our committee members who are willing to step up and give her some help with that? I don't see anybody jumping, so give us your little spiel of why we should help you and where you're at.
No items on the agenda, so so nothing has come up. So it's kind of one of those ad hoc. I think that, you know, as it's needed kind of things. So at this time, there's really been no movement in that area.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I volunteer to assist Member Nuno with this committee.
Okay, so let's go ahead and note that you're a new member on that, and you can work with the committee member Nuno and see where you're at and where you might like to go with that. And again, of course, we're open to any input from the city council if they see a need that needs to be addressed, but they'll let us know. So then that moves us down to the CalPERS Liability Committee. Do we have any member that has anything to report on that? Okay, I'm not aware of anything that's actively being done with that at this moment. And again, we're trying to deal with a couple that we do have some stuff going. The next one is the long-term financial sustainability. And again, we have a single member, and that's Member Garcia. So, Mr. Garcia, give us your little spiel of why somebody should step up and help you, and let us know where you're at.
Have nothing to report as of now, so I can use some help.
Okay. Do we have a committee member that's, I'm thinking a little bit of budgeting concept and somebody that has some ideas or willing to do some research about what kind of financial stability that this committee should be looking towards? Any volunteers? And again, I'm assuming this can be done by a alternate member as well. Think about it. Stew over it before our next meeting, because we're going to come back and ask you again. Then we move to the bond accountability, and that's Mr. Lee Masters and Ms. Eustachian. Do you have anything to report?
Mr. Chairman, we did present just now, as you saw, our report and our findings. I do think we should probably keep the subcommittee standing in the event that the city council decides they want anything more detailed or any revisions to be done. But outside of that, the work currently tasked to us is finished.
Okay, and that's probably the first one that really has a project that had a time limit or had a viable endpoint for the project, and good to see one that's been completed. You know, others, our internal control committee is rolling, and the same with perhaps a goodly portion of it. That moves us down to our future agenda items. There have been a couple that have been addressed that we need to get on there. That's the April 11th presentation of the financial training, whether that training is actually presented or we get some indication of what's there and how it's going to be wrapped up, so we could get that on the future agenda items. And then we had a request for the invoice to be reviewed in 6 months. 6 months would be the meeting in, so we're March, April, May, June, July, August, September. September, good place to pop that. We're not in the middle of anything hard and fast with budget that's going to overwhelm.
Chair, I'd like to add an item.
Yes.
If we could add the single audit report, that will be coming before the Finance and Audit Committee at the next meeting.
Okay. And so that's a report on where we're at with the single audit and whether we need it. It's not an actual audit, correct?
It is actual audit.
Oh, it
so,
is
yeah,
the audit report. Okay, so
Correct.
presentation of the single audit report.
Correct.
Okay, can we add that? Anything else from anybody? Okay, I don't believe we need to take a vote on that. It just information and putting it out there. Then that moves us down to our treasurer's meeting review. We'll turn time over to Mr. Genetti.
Well, let's see, it took us about an hour to get to here. It's going to take me about an hour to review everything. It was a good meeting. Let me say this, the budget, I'm just going to overall, because the council gets the budget and they can see it. Overall, we're in very good position right now. We're in positive with both the operational budget and the wastewater budget as far as being under budget. Investment policy certification, we did receive that tonight and understand now that policy has been accepted through the certification process. We had a nice discussion, thorough discussion on the invoice pay with defined what that was. And I really appreciate it because I'm seeing it every week and I just wasn't sure what it meant. And now I have a clear understanding. We also have now a subcommittee for RFP process where the Finance Audit Committee will review the RFP decision that's going to go forward to the council as an extra set of eyes to understand the thought that went into accepting who won the proposal. We received the bank accountability subcommittee document today. So we have that. And the subcommittees, I just want to say something on the subcommittees. We're going to get the training, which I'll emphasize by April. We'll see it as a committee and then we'll decide when it goes to the council. But reserve policy and long-term financial sustainability are not on the higher priorities. We need to clean up some of these others based on the council's direction. And I think we'll have more people to be able to get involved in those as we get through some of these other processes like the CFD training, the financial training, CalPERS liability, which we did do something on with the PARS 115, if I got the right numbers right on that, where we've taken a step towards reducing our liability on that. So that's my report.
Thank you. And then Finance Director's comments.
Thank you. It was a very full meeting, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it with no additional comments this evening. Thank you.
All right. I'd just like to wrap up and say that we had a lot of work when this committee was first set up, and there was a lot of stuff that was done, a lot of super things that were accomplished, and I think we were struggling a little bit to find our need and where we needed to move from there. And I think with the direction from the city council and the members of this committee, I think we're getting into a groove and bringing some help to the city council, and I think that we're finding value for ourselves as well. And with that, I want to thank everybody for their time, for the effort that you spend outside of these meetings, and for the city staff and employees that show up and are willing to support us in our giving back the support to the city council and the staff as well. So we're adjourned this meeting at 7:15 p.m. and the next meeting will be on April 11th at 6 p.m. Same location, probably the same process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Right.
Hang on one second, let me look at my calendar.